Chief futurist at futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, and author of Facing Our Futures, Nikolas Badminton, joining us on Canada Now. And Nick, this week we discussed the rise of cars coming out of China. How threatened are the West by this?
I mean, clearly there's a lot of scale to the Chinese car industry. There's a lot of innovation, especially in the electric vehicles market as well. So the West has got their eyes very firmly set on China, especially the US and Canada, where our economies are reliant on that automotive industry, sort of health and growth as well. And what's interesting is in China, there's so many cars being produced and they're incredibly cheap. Right, we're seeing a lot of these go into Europe. We're seeing some make it into North America, not that many right now. But if you think about this from an import-export perspective for China and the influx into somewhere like Canada or the United States, it could quite sizably take a chunk out of the market of more homegrown brands as well.
Well, in talking about worry on this side of the world, about 1 million American manufacturing workers lost their jobs to Chinese
Right.
competition, and that's between the period of 1997 to 2011. So that is going back, but nevertheless, you can see why those in the West would be worried about this, and we'll get to more of that in a second, looking at more of the bright side on it. But
Yeah.
in terms of growth, China now exceeds Japanese totals in GDP.
Yeah, and companies like Toyota have really taken their eye off of the ball of the electric vehicle market, which is crazy because they were the first to come out with the first like really mass market hybrid vehicle, right, with the Prius. So yeah, I mean these are very strong signals that indicate the change is coming to the global market as well. Sure, people are going to be wanting more homegrown vehicles or whatever. We certainly see a lot of that loyalty out there. But as people sort of struggle to make ends meet and whatever, and they're gonna want the new technology, and they're gonna, especially when you've got legislation saying, no more, internal combustion engine only vehicle is going to be like sold by like 2030, 2035 or whatever. People are going to need access to cheaper vehicles, right? So there's going to be a lot of pressures, even if the Chinese don't manage to sell, swathes of their vehicles in a lot of the different lines into North America. The squeeze is going to be felt from the consumer side as well. So it's a really interesting balancing act that needs to go on.
So I guess it depends on the perspective, but should the rise of cars out of China not be feared but celebrated?
This isn't about cars and automotive. This is more about the motives for economic power globally. Now we're seeing a world where quite possibly we're going to have China #1 economy in the world, US #2, India #3 by 2030, 2035. So, changing of the guard is already coming. And, even if China just focuses on selling vehicles in Southeast Asia and even into Africa, they're going to be okay. But there's a kudos and a status that needs to come from selling vehicles in North America and having that consumer base really ignited and connecting with those brands.
All right. Yeah, really, this is a part of a much bigger conversation, but minimizing it as far as EVs are concerned. Like, does China now lead the way as far as EVs are concerned?
I mean, there's a lot of homegrown EV only companies that are coming out. There's a lot of different technologies, including like battery swapping networks and a whole number of things that are really existing only in China. Yeah, I mean, people are on board. The idea that, China will eventually get to, a majority of their energy being provided by renewable energy. It's a really interesting dynamic to see. I mean, these are the edges of competition right now. Water, energy, food, energy being the big determiner, I think, of geopolitical power as we go forward.
So, do you think that China is going to influence other car makers around the world who are in competition with them, like automakers? They mentioned Toyota, who underestimated the EV future. Maybe now they're singing a different tune.
Well, yeah, Toyota, like the Toyota family, have been sort of quietly shuffled out of the way. New CEOs are a little bit more progressive, and they, the family, the Toyota family, were like, no, this is not going to be the future that we have at Toyota. And it was, are they going to be the next Kodak that invents invents the digital camera and then goes bankrupt. I don't think it's quite going to be like that, right?
Yeah.
We're going to be learning a lot from the Chinese. The Chinese obviously learn a lot from the West, but like, so I think that this is good for global competition. I think that these are geopolitical pawns in a very large chess game that's going to last for the next 200 years.
Okay, so the large chess game, and okay, looking ahead to 200 years.
Yeah.
Let's look ahead to this one. There's going to be billions of people, Nick, voting in at least 60 countries around the world this year.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a huge year, politically speaking. The impact of China, and we're just talking about one little example here. How does the rise of China impact the way people are going to vote around the world, or does it?
I'm not sure exactly if you can draw a straight line between China and the voting preferences of, say, people in Canada or the US or whatever. I don't think you can.
Yeah.
It's going to be happening in the back rooms and discussions, and maybe on a global political stage if certain individuals in certain countries want to make this, you know, a banner item for discussion. And we've seen that before in other leadership around the world. You know, China good, China bad. China narratives are definitely part of the modern discourse, and it's an interesting place that we live in right now.
Well, and we talk about influence, like we talked about China's influence, if it has any at all, right, in terms of voting. But in terms of elections around the world, like let's say the U.S. election,
right?
However that's going to go, might that impact how people are going to vote elsewhere around the world, maybe to gain a balance or to continue momentum?
You know, I'm not a political analyst, so I sort of go back and look at sort of some of the larger trends and signals around the world. Again, it's really tough to think that this could be a direct determiner of preference. I think people are going to vote with their grassroots preferences and the hype that's happening at home before they look to a global stage. Going forward, is that going to be the case? Who knows? I think people are going to be voting on healthcare, water, energy, food, resiliency, responses to climate change, circular economy, and whatever in the next 30 to 50 years. They're going to be banner items. Right now, you know, there's a lot of petty consumerist narratives and hyperbole that's out there around, you know, I can't get a cheap enough 85-inch TV, right? So once we transcend beyond those material goods into something that's a little bit more, you know, essential, then I think we're going to see a change in how people think around the world.
Yeah, I hope so. Chief Futurist at Futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, author of Facing Our Futures, Nikolas Badminton. Nick, appreciate it, pal. Thank you.
Keep on trucking, Jeff.